Senator McCarthy.
Thank you, Mr Acting Deputy President. I rise to speak against this bill. It is a bill that really all senators should be totally against. Totally against, simply in one word: inefficient. Inefficient in that this government has failed to do what it should have done in terms of representing Australians on these trial sites. I spoke in the Senate this week about this government's failure to adequately evaluate what was going on in the 4 trial sites across Australia, and this government has failed to bring to the Senate, has failed to bring to Senate estimates, has failed to bring even to Senate inquiries as to what it is about the cashless debit card that is so good. So good. This Senate and all senators must uphold the highest of standards in the work that we do in approving or disproving legislation. This piece of legislation that has come before the Senate has no evidence to prove that forcing people onto compulsory quarantining of this cashless welfare card is a good thing. If anything, Mr Acting Deputy President, it shows the reverse. It shows how discriminated people feel. It shows how discriminated that the behaviour of others towards them is. It shows the inability to empower residents of Australia to rise above poverty, to rise above vulnerable circumstances, and it does not show the evidence of what this government espouses the card does. Now, have a good think about that for a moment, Mr Acting Deputy President. We here in the Senate must always research and inquire and ask the deeper questions about, is this good policy? Does this help our fellow Australians? Does it enable them to take their place in Australian society as equals? Does it enable them to pay their bills in a way with dignity without having to be scrambling and scratching on a phone for hours, begging for help to be able to get some dollars out to pay a bill, whether it's their rent, whether it's in the local supermarket, whether they want to take their children to an event or a function but can't? That's not empowering. There is no dignity in families who cannot look after their own simply because they are forced on a particular card, all because the government says you should be. And that's the real problem here, Mr Acting Deputy President, is that the government has failed to show any evidence to prove otherwise. If anything, the cashless debit card is so discriminatory and so racist, like the basics card that we have in the Northern Territory. And let's go back. Let's go back to the history for the Northern Territory. In 2007, Mr Acting Deputy President, the then Prime Minister John Howard intervened into the lives of First Nations people across the Northern Territory. 70 prescribed communities forced immediately under the emergency intervention. It happened for the reasons that the then Prime Minister and Indigenous Affairs Minister said were based on caring for children and rivers of grog. But we've come to know, only a few months after that decision, that then former Minister Alexander Downer spoke publicly and said we only intervened in the Northern Territory because we could. Because we could. For those of us in the Northern Territory, we knew then what being disempowered felt like. I was the member for Arnhem and stood in the Northern Territory Parliament representing the people of Arnhem Land. And never in my life had I felt so disempowered, and here I was, a politician, representing thousands of people in my electorate, and I could not change or stop anything. I went out to Arnhem Land on the 3rd of August 2007, a couple of months after the intervention occurred. There were meetings by First Nations people happening at the Gama Festival at Gulkula. And I knew when I went there that I was going to face the barrage of criticism, concern and hurt by First Nations people. And I did. I went out there to face them, knowing it wasn't me that made the decision of the Commonwealth to come in and impose such draconian laws on people of colour, but they were my constituents, and I had to go out there and face them because no one from the Commonwealth was coming up. No one from the Commonwealth Parliament was walking there on Gulkula country saying, oh yeah, this is why we've intervened on your life. So on the 3rd of August 2007, I walked in on that ceremony ground and I got eaten alive. First Nations people were so hurt, so angry, and they let us know it. And they turned to myself and my parliamentary colleagues from the Northern Territory Parliament and they said, you did nothing. You did nothing. And our lives were all being treated like we're pedophiles, we can't feed our children, we don't care for our children, we don't work, we're all druggies and alcos. You did nothing. And as we walked away, some of my colleagues said to me, but we couldn't do anything. I said, yeah, we could have. Constitutionally, we mightn't have been able to. We're a self-governing territory. Commonwealth can intervene on us any time it likes. But we could have protested, we could have marched the streets, we could have had civil disobedience, but we did nothing. The hurt was palpable. The anger has never gone away. That sense of deep oppression, of racism, has gone on for 13 years since that intervention and the policy of the Basics card and more across the Northern Territory. Oh yes, I heard all the arguments. But millions of dollars is going into the Northern Territory now. Millions of dollars. You know, we've got all these Canberra public servants flying back and forwards, assisting with the establishment of safe houses, safe places, even, you know, a few extra police stations. You know, there's millions of dollars going in. And I turned around and I said, yeah, but we needed that anyway. Why did you have to intervene on people's lives to give them what they rightly deserved in the first place? To have decent homes, to have safe houses for their families, especially the women, to have more police protection, like any other Australian community. Why is it that First Nations people always have to feel like we are grateful for receiving something that is a basic right for any other Australian in this country? So when the government comes to the Senate and says not only does it want to make those 4 trial sites across Australia for the cashless debit card permanent, it now wants to include every single one of those families under the Basics card. 25,000 extra people. On what grounds? On what basis? There has not even been an evaluation of the Basics card in the Northern Territory since 2014. That's 6 years ago. And even that evaluation proved that it was not working. The Basics card was not working. So when I raise in the Senate here Where is the evaluation for those families who've felt completely undignified for all of this time? Their children have had to grow up over the last 13 years feeling like oppression is our future, oppression is our life. That doesn't give hope. And I expect better of this Senate, and I expect better of the minister, and I expect better of the government. At least have a decent, good reason as to why you're doing what you're doing, but you don't, do you? You've been sloppy in the way you've gone about getting any evidence, and in fact, worse, you've given an abrogation of responsibility to Australians by not even looking at the $2.5 million of evidence that you called for. And you still brought this legislation into the Senate and you passed it in the House. You had a member on your side telling you that this legislation was wrong. I wish she had had the courage of her convictions to cross the floor, because we would not be having this conversation in here if she had done that. And I know that the Bridget Archer MP is not the only one who has that view in the House. So it's left to senators to show some courage, not just some, but a hell of a lot of courage. Even if you like the cashless debit card, even if you think purchasing goods from 900,000 outlets across Australia is a wonderful thing, I ask you to consider this. Do not reward a government who has been lazy, inefficient and abrogated the responsibilities of this Senate in having the right kind of evidence to bring to the Senate and respecting the Senate and senators here to be able to make wise and just decisions on behalf of all Australians. Because what you have brought in here in this legislation is not that. You have failed. You have not even spoken and given the opportunity to the people of the Northern Territory to tell you how they feel on the basics card, let alone just expecting them to roll across onto the cashless debit card. There is no decency in that. It is so un-Australian. It really is. You know, we do pride ourselves here in the Senate of trying to examine and investigate everything from every perspective. And I do urge senators to recognise that even if you do like this cashless debit card, you cannot make a decision on behalf of thousands and thousands and thousands of Australians where no evidence has come forward in this Senate that says the cashless debit card works. At the very least, you should condemn this government for its failure. You should condemn this government because of the position that it's put the Senate into and the position it's put senators into. It is not our place to fix your mess. And I say to the crossbenchers, this legislation is wrong. It is unjust, it is racist and so un-Australian. Vote no. Vote no to this legislation and compel the government to do its job, to get off its backside and get out there and actually do your job. Listen to the Australians out there who are crying out for your empathy and to recognise the hardship that they are experiencing. Take the sand out of your ears and let's hope we can soften your hearts, because all this legislation does is push people further and further in the ground. Please, please, senators, vote no to this horrendous legislation.